was the lead attorney for the card interveners in last year's injunction, known as Fiore versus New York. Jorge has also been featured as a legal expert on national and local news networks such as CNN, ABC, and NPR, just to name a few. Next, we have Samantha O'Brien. She is the Director of Data and Compliance at Fortune Society. For more than half a century, the Fortune Society has provided justice-involved people with the tools necessary and the resources and support they need to live as successful and contributing members of their communities. Its mission is to support successful reentry from incarceration to promote alternatives to incarceration and thus straightening the fabric of our communities. I'm gonna leave Cause for last because we just talked about him. Next we have Eli Northrup. He's the Policy Director for the Criminal Defense Practice at the Bronx Defenders and the Director of the Bronx Cannabis Hub, a free resource to help New Yorkers impacted by the war on drugs apply for retail cannabis licenses. At the Bronx Defenders, Eli leads a team of advocates advancing policies to bring fairness and dignity to our criminal justice system. For over a decade, he has worked as a public defender in criminal courts representing community members who are unable to afford an attorney. Kaz is the founder of and CEO of CONBUD, as well as the CEO and co-founder of CONBUD. Kaz was among the initial recipients of OCM's first card licenses issued to companies led by individuals with previous convictions for cannabis-related offenses and to organizations offering services to justice-involved individuals. CONBUD stands as the state's premier licensed cannabis dispensary run and operated by formerly incarcerated individuals. Kaz serves as a beacon for providing second chances and is dedicated to facilitating their reintegration in society. And last but certainly not least, we have the illustrious Cassandra Federici. That's her name. Illustrious. She's the Executive Director of the Drug Policy Alliance, a national nonprofit that works to end the war on drugs. During her time at the DPA, Cassandra has built and led innovative campaigns around policing, the overdose crisis, and cannabis legalization, each with a consistent racial justice focus. Her advocacy and all of the Drug Policy Alliance's work lies in the intersection of health, equity, autonomy, and justice. We have Legal to a Limit.
Y'all, I have slippery pants on and this feels like I'm not gonna sue you.
You need another stool?
No, it's just that I've actually fallen off chairs before and these are like slippery and I was like, oh, this is so much. So my name is Cassandra Federici, as was just said. I'm excited to be here with all of you. I think one of the things that will shape the tenor of my questions is that I am one of the lead organizers that actually made cannabis legal in New York. And so that work stemmed from not making cannabis legal, but making people legal, right? So the focus of our work on cannabis reform was to end the criminalization of people because of cannabis. They use cannabis as an excuse to strip search people. They use cannabis as an excuse to lock people in cages, to kick them out of school, to lose custody of their kids, to arrest them, to dehumanize them. That was the purpose of our work around cannabis. The regulation of cannabis in a tax and regulate model is essentially what we were left with because we couldn't figure out another way to regulate it outside of capitalism. If we could have figured that out, we probably would have done that. We are really, this is the first panel I've done on cannabis since the MRTA has passed. And so when I was invited by the organizers, I kind of was like, ooh, I get a lot of these. And I ignore them all. And because I happened to be on the panel with these folks, I said yes, because it feels like it can be an honest conversation about what's happening and what we should be focusing on. So we are gonna talk about card and regulation and all those things, but I center all the conversations I have around cannabis around justice and about freeing people, freeing brown and black people. And sometimes that's about the green and sometimes that's not. Green either being cannabis or money. So just wanna name that as you hear the tenor. And I have an attitude, so you will also hear that as well. Okay, so just wanna give that disclaimer. All right. So starting off, I have these beautiful questions that they asked to try to keep me on script. Okay, I'm just gonna stand. I'm also not gonna go in order. So, Kaz, can you start with what got you involved in cannabis law or cannabis in general?
Cannabis law, I don't know. I don't know.
Or maybe the law was involved with you?
Yeah. So I was first arrested when I was 13. I guess that's enough. I'll turn it on. There you go. So when the first time I got involved with cannabis, I was probably like 11 years old. Just like my cousin that lived across the hall, so I lived 3 blocks away from here. My mom still lives in the same tenement apartment that I grew up in. She has rent control for life, and I do too. I'm gonna inherit that. That's like $700 for 2 bedrooms. You can't find that shit. We grew up in a floor where all the relatives lived in the same 5 apartments on that floor. So when I got beat up by one uncle, I got home and he got the message, and my dad beat me up. So it was like double whippings all the time. Anyway, my cousins were all older than me, and they were the ones on the corner. They're the ones that were serving we called them fiends back then. And they had lines down the block, they had chains, they had all the bread, and I thought that was success. I'm listening to Tupac and Biggie as a kid, and I'm thinking that, life is success if I got money and girls and chains. And that's what I thought, glory was. And I saw my younger cousin, he started smoking probably at like 9, and he was like the bad kid, like he was in gangs at like 10 and all this stuff. And I saw him smoking, I thought I wanted to be cool with him, so I was like, yo, let's go to the roof, and we blew it down, and we rolled like a football blunt, and I got high, and then I fell in love with it. And then I became the kid when I was going to junior high on Forsyth Street, by this Jesuit. It was the thing that I learned the most in my life was by Jesuits in this middle school called Nativity Mission Center, run by Father Jack. But in that school, people used to call me Smokey the Bear because that was like the commercial that people were seeing, and I was always high in class and whatever. But I was the kid that give me $1 here, $1 here, $1 here, and I'm going down the block and I'm buying a nickel and I'm just chipping in a quarter for the Philly and I'm rolling it up and everybody's ciphering. And that's how we did it. And I stopped doing that because I was like, why don't I buy an ounce? And so I saved $100, bought my first ounce, and then started flipping them in nickels, and then it was just like a supply and demand. And then I got first arrested on Forsyth Street right here on Forsyth and Broome with my little brother. My little brother is Christopher Marte, city council for all downtown Manhattan now. But that moment when I got arrested, that split us up. When I was 13, he was 9 years old, and that was very traumatizing for him, and that scared him straight. And for me, it was like, man, I came home the next day, like whatever, that was light. I thought I was tough, and I'm like, I'll do another day, whatever, So it was just like, after that, I got probably about a dozen arrests, every time I got caught, I had cannabis.
Thank you for sharing that. There's a lot of stuff in there,
Yep.
right?
A lot.
It could be a whole DPA conference, but we won't do it here. But I'll put you on my list. But here we talk, part of the reason I started with you is because, as I mentioned before, we have to start with people who are experiencing these policies, right? So much of the regulation conversation has been how do we put it into a white economic structure, as opposed to how do we build around the economic structures that are already existing in our communities, right? and what is the work that we're doing to say that that economic structure is wrong, and what is the process of legalizing something, right? And then even the truth is, right now, there's still people on the corner
Yep.
doing that, right? When you're selling it downstairs, right? And so like how does that conversation show up? And we'll talk about that a little bit more
And
today.
I've hired the people from the corner. They
Right,
work-
right, exactly.
Some people are literally working and they was just they still doing stuff on the side, you know? But I'm sorry, they still, I mean, I don't wanna put that work out there.
Yeah, hey,
But
everybody got
yeah.
a side hustle, this is mine. But I appreciate it, because I think part of the question was, what was your first experience with the law, but also it's like, what was the law's first experience with you, right? But it goes both ways. And so, Samantha, I wanna bring you in here to talk a little bit about, your first experience with cannabis law, whether, working on it or it being worked on you.
Hello. Oh, there we go. Hi, everybody. For me, it really just came down to me really being introduced to the cannabis in and of itself. Really came about around 2014. Coming home from the service. I was in the Army for 6 years. Transitioning back home was just, it wasn't easy. It wasn't an easy experience. A lot of experiences that I had while I was in the service, I never talked about. A lot of people that I came home to couldn't understand the experiences that I had went through while I was in the service and just going through that. And then coming home, I came home with injuries. I came home with other things that I had to go through, and going to the VA and having to get appointments to the VA, whether it was for mental health or just to get my injuries looked at, was very daunting. And then through the VA, just pumping you full of a lot of stuff. It's easy to get any prescription you want while you're in the VA, but it's harder to get a doctor's appointment. So I have to wait for weeks to get a doctor's appointment, but I could easily go and refill a prescription as often as I wanted down at the VA. So then for me, I had always like smoked as a teenager, that type of stuff, but then I started smoking and it became a coping mechanism for me, because I didn't like the way I felt being on all the meds that I was on coming out of the service. So then on top of that, then I'm trying to figure out what's my next step. Like, I came home from the service, I didn't have a plan. I'm like, all I knew for the last 6 years was this. And then the job that I had while on MOS, while I was in the service, I didn't want to do that. I was a medic. I didn't want to see that anymore. I was tired of that. So it was like, now what do I do? So now you're in a place where you're stuck. You don't really know who you can talk to. So you're just kind of left with your own thoughts and different things. So now you're just trying to find different ways to just exist and just maneuver throughout your day-to-day. And you're smoking, but then you're also trying to come down from the meds that you've been on for all this time. So trying to navigate that and going back into school and meeting other vets who are going through those same issues and those same problems and trying to figure out like what they do, then they're like, well, I don't even go to the VA, I just roll a blunt and I'm good. I'm like, all right. So that's what really, and then I started becoming more intentional about that and trying to educate myself on, my smoking habits, what I'm smoking, what I'm getting it from. And this is, mind you, prior to legalization, so there wasn't that much education out there on what you were getting. You're just hoping that whatever you got from your plug wasn't booth, and it wasn't gonna put you like in zombie mode, and we know what that zombie mode is. You hoping nobody put nothing in your stuff, none of that other stuff. So you stick to what you know, but you still don't know what you're getting.
That's right.
But you just had that trust in your weed man, right? You trust your weed man. You told your weed man all your secrets and all these different things. So for me, just like I had always started being very intentional with my cannabis use, and then translating that over into advocacy work, where I started working in the community and working with kids, and they're coming into the office high. And then people are like, oh, kick them out the office, and if they're like that, why am I kicking them out of the office?
That's right.
They're safe here. This is a safe space. I know they're high, but they're inside, they're here with me, they could've went anywhere else, but they're here. What am I gonna do? I'm gonna feed them, and we're gonna come together, and we're gonna break bread. You may not hear everything I say, but at least you're getting a meal, and you're not on the street.
That's right.
I'm not gonna kick you out the office because of that. I don't know what you're going through, and some of the kids that I work with were going through some
Real shit.
So it was like, damn, you might need that. So who am I to judge you? You're trying to figure it out just like how I try to figure it out.
Yeah.
So for me, that was just my pathway into that, and then using those kids and those experiences as a way to break bread with them, get them to listen, and they were like, you know what? She's not gonna judge me. She's like me, but I'm not gonna promote that. I'm not gonna say, yo, go do this, go do that, go buy from this person. What I'm gonna do is be like, listen, respect the space.
Mhm.
If you're gonna come here like that, empty your pockets, don't bring nothing in here, put it outside somewhere, find a hiding spot, and just come and just chill. And just don't do anything wild, don't do anything crazy. We'll get you some food, but I'm just happy that you're here.
That's right.
And that was my pathway into that.
I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why I wanted to start with y'all, and I didn't ask you that before, right? Part of the reason is because I know them already. But part of it is because I want to center this conversation about what can regulation do and what regulation can't do, right? These are things that are not gonna be adjusted or addressed in a law. We actually need more things than a law to actually fix our society, right? So the title of this is Legal to a Limit. The law has a limit, but our organizing and our community building doesn't. And so like, what is that kind of work that we need to do to actually make this fit what we need it to be? And as how many people here are from CUNY Law? And so part of the things that I'm trying to impress upon you as young attorneys or future attorneys is to recognize that the law is a tool, but it's not your whole toolbox. And what are the ways that you can stretch your skills to actually create the containers and infrastructure to support the young people that are selling on the corner, who are showing up high to school, that are dealing with trauma from coming home from the service. Like, all these things the law can't fix. The law's not set up to fix it. But there are other things that we can do to actually decriminalize the spaces that people are in so that our society is shifting to create the world that we want. Because the thing about laws is that they can be changed back, right? So I was born in 1986, I had the right to an abortion federally. In 2024, I do not have a right to an abortion federally. A world where cannabis is legal but abortion is not actually the world I want to be in. You know what I'm saying? Not that I want cannabis to not be legal, but I actually want more rights, right? I don't want substances to have more rights than my body. Does that make sense? All right. You just all have an attitude, right? Jorge, can you talk about your introduction to cannabis law or law introduction to you?
It's been a part. I'm born and raised less than half a mile from here, 4th Street and Avenue D. Grew up in NYCHA. My sister was arrested for smoking a blunt. Maybe 89 was probably the first time I seen like my sister in bracelets because she was smoking. And then that's right around the time the city started changing its attitude. Before you got caught smoking, your parent could come pick you up in the precinct. But then they started actually processing you, going through the bookings and changing that and seeing what that did for the family. And having to sit in a courtroom with your mother like, y'all, hope she don't get bailed. She gets bailed, this is how we're gonna have to work something out. But and then that was a constant theme. So fast forward, I graduate from college, I go to grad school, I'm working as a counselor in a high school. I have a student who's in my classroom, well, in my office, and there's cameras in the classroom, so it's proof that he's in my classroom. He signs in because that was the way we did it. Long story short, he gets arrested for what they say they saw him sell cannabis at the same time he was in my classroom. So obviously that didn't happen. And the fact that I had to go to court to kind of be like, this didn't happen and it's bullshit, despite having this, right? But the reality is he was a black kid, so you're black in America, that's essentially how you're treated. Fast forward after that, I graduate from law school and I'm clerking, meaning I'm working for a judge. We're going through what the docket looks like for the day. Somebody is gonna be before us who is charged with possession of paraphernalia. The possession for paraphernalia, they saying it's alleged to cannabis. Can anybody take a guess what it was? No, not a bomb. Take another guess. Wasn't a lighter, take another guess. It wasn't that. It wasn't a bag either. It was fucking Visine. Right? So this cop said, I know the area, this area is patrolled and people who are hanging out here do drugs, and I saw paraphernalia. Thankfully, I worked for a really unapologetically Jamaican-born judge who let that cop, the department, and everybody else have it, right? So, and then, that kind of fueled me to, like, this is all BS, right? And it's understanding people, like Cassandra said, and really bringing stories to the forefront, right? Law school isn't gonna teach you how to be authentic for those who are looking to seek the law, but if you're authentic, then you're gonna be able to build allyships, and those ally stories is what helped us to get to where we are today, and essentially, led me to look through probably more arrests than I care to note, because Cassandra's office was using the Freedom of Information law to request every 220, every 221 arrests throughout New York State from every precinct, and dissecting that, then cross-matching that to court systems to kind of figure out, can we get demographics and then also nationalities based on surnames, based on whatever photographs we can, and then analyze maybe like 20 years of data that led to 89% of convictions in New York State were those of Black and brown people. For those who don't know, New York State had ended criminalization of cannabis a long time ago, so the simple fact that 89% of people were not getting a death ticket appearance when it was a right within itself shows you how the system works, and I guess that was my introduction to the law.
Thank you. Eli?
Yeah, this is a story of privilege, right? Because my introduction to it was when I started working as a public defender.
That's why you went last.
And that's with the law. With cannabis, it was much earlier, but that's what we all know, and what made legalization and decriminalization eventually inevitable was how disparate enforcement was. Because I grew up in a place where everybody smoked. I smoked in high school, I smoked in college. We didn't think about it for a second. I didn't know people that got arrested for it. But I started working in the Bronx in 2015, and the number one case that I handled was low-level possession of cannabis. And even though, as Jorge mentioned, at that time it was decriminalized, the effects that arrest had on people were dramatic. Because even if somebody wasn't necessarily going to go to jail, people were separated from their children by ACS when for cannabis possession. People were deported for a single joint. People would lose their job if they worked in a school. They had Department of Education would immediately suspend you if you're arrested for cannabis. This was also a time in the Bronx where it took 4 years to get a trial.
That's right.
So these penalties were long lasting. And we saw so many, obviously, illegal searches based on the odor of cannabis, because it's an impossible thing to disprove if an officer says that they smell it. So that discrepancy, and it was used as a tool, as Cassandra said, is something that when DPA really nailed down and looked at it, and news stories started to come out about the racial differences, it became inevitable that legalization may happen, but what legalization looked like was not inevitable.
That's right.
And I hope we get a chance to talk with that, but I will say it is so dramatically different in criminal court right now across the state. And you see that working at Fortune, but we don't see those cases anymore. It used to be a huge part. So I want to just acknowledge the huge difference that legalization has made in that area, because so many people were affected by that every single day, and we really don't see that anymore. And now we're moving on to the next problems, which, as we mentioned, society is very stubborn and racist, and capitalism is hard to push back and to create a different kind of world, and that's what we're encountering now. But we really did we made a huge difference in many people's lives just by the legalization, and we shouldn't just forget about that, because there's a legacy. And we'll talk more about that, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Eli. I mean, I think one of the things that I just want to name is that cannabis is the number 4 reason why someone is deported. Okay? 90% of child abuse cases are for neglect, and a disproportionate amount of that have to do with the presence of cannabis. And if you didn't know or didn't see a few months ago, part of the MRTA actually basically prohibited ACS from taking away a kid because of cannabis. They did it, and then that mother sued and got paid back by the city, right? IDP, the Immigrant Defense Project, actually won a case which, based on cannabis, is pushing, right now there's an open window for people who got deported for drugs to be able to come back, okay? Also the conversation, the last time we looked at the numbers, cannabis arrests have gone down 99%, right? So part of the conversation of like, how have you gotten involved in cannabis, what was cannabis law involvement with you, is to really set the stage. And here I wanna go into the question that they wanted me to talk about, is that 3 of the 4 panelists here potentially have the opportunity to have gotten a card license, right? Because part of the regulation conversation was people who had faced criminalization for cannabis, right? Your sister, yourself. I don't think, you didn't say you got arrested, right? Right. But you probably know somebody. Yes. Are all people that were potentially eligible for a card license. And so Jorge, can you explain what a card license is? And then let's get into the fast and dirty of where we are with card.
Sure. So before I get into card, I want to talk about what the talking points were to get us to the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act. And prior to that, proposed was the Cannabis Regulation and Taxation Act that failed for over a decade. It was really putting people forward. So the CARD program is a conditional adult use retail dispensary program, which provided an extra opportunity and extra priority for individuals to enter a regulated market who had firsthand experience on the hardships of having been involved with the plant. Makes sense. 89% of people look a certain kind of way, have no other choice but to create their own jobs, their own employment, because no one wants to give them an opportunity. No one talks about, on the federal level, if you get caught in a raid and there's cocaine and cannabis, the cannabis is gonna stick, they'll drop the cocaine charge because cannabis is a Schedule I drug. So it makes sense when you're talking about putting people first, that you would wanna make sure that those who have the most experience benefit the most. There are about 19 million people who live in New York State. Almost around 750,000 people have a cannabis conviction in New York State. So it makes sense that you would want to make sure that those people are in the center. So the CARD program was created to ensure that those who have experience, namely as entrepreneurs, have a positive book of business for at least 2 years to show some sort of consistency in being a business owner, and who have a conviction are able to reap the benefits of getting to the market first, being able to be a retail dispensary owner. And as you could imagine, individuals did not like that idea. They didn't like this idea that what they thought those who didn't have experience in a regulated market would be leading the market. And essentially that's how the CARD program happened. That's what the CARD program is. And there are a little bit over 476 CARD licensees, individuals who applied and got it.
Thank you.
No problem.
When we talk about CARD and we talk about the individuals that didn't like it, folks in the room, I am assuming that y'all are paying attention to the news, yes? And you're paying attention to how people are talking about the cannabis industry here in New York. And you've seen the headlines, you've seen the stories, you've heard from our talking head elected officials. And some of the conversation around CARD is, how can they let criminals benefit and reward them with licenses, right? Or they don't know how to run businesses. Why would you give this business to them? Let us go first, right? Does that sound familiar? Who's saying it? You said who?
A whole lot of people saying.
Whole lot of people saying it. What they look like?
White heterosexual, regular.
People from New York?
No.
Upstate.
Long Island.
a lot of Long Islands, upstate, Cali, Colorado. One of the things that, and I'm listen, you recording? One of the things that I said, okay, you want me to not, okay, you want me to come first? Okay. One of the things that I said was that New York cannabis would be for New Yorkers. That we wasn't gonna allow California people come in and sell their shit, right? That we were really clear that it was gonna be black and brown New Yorkers that were impacted by the drug war to come in and come outside from the shadows to be the industry that already existed. So the card program was not something that was listed in the MRTA, but was created in the spirit of the intention of the MRTA, right? To figure out not we get to go at the same time as everybody else, but that we have the audacity to say that we will go first. That has never happened. We're even in this moment right now where the Supreme Court is going after affirmative action, they're going after DEI, they're saying anything that says any kind of prioritization of people that have been harmed by our systems is wrong. And so is anyone actually confused that now that New York is
so
creating?
confused. I'm confused because I still feel like I'm living in the Twilight Zone, you know what I mean? Like walking 3 blocks down, you see my spot, there's still people serving people. And then like walking down the block from home, seeing this in the corner is just like, for me, I'm still in a dream, you know what I mean?
A dream or a nightmare?
I mean, I feel like it's a dream. Yeah,
A dream.
I'm having fun. It's a nightmare, but a dream too.
Yeah.
You know?
But part of this conversation is the card license intention was to create a structure to create some version of intentionality, right? And it's been rocky, right? And so Cas and Jorge, you know, whichever one of you wants to go first, what's been happening?
There have been attacks on the card program. And when I say attacks, people attack it from different angles, right? They want to attack who's getting the license, or they want to say who's not getting the license. So in the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, there's a list that notes who gets an extra priority. So while card, conditional adult use retail dispensary isn't within the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, justice-involved individuals, or what's defined as justice-involved individual, who qualify for card is mentioned verbatim, and it notes that those individuals get extra priority. And then there's a line, right, like we understand what happens after there's a period. After there's a period, that's the end of the thought. Anything that comes after that are additions, right? So people are using or misusing the English language to say, hey judge, I'm supposed to be part of this line too because, and you can insert whatever the X is. I'm from a community that's similarly harmed that, you know, I didn't get to apply, right? And the reality is, in order to have a day in court, all you need to do is state a claim, right? You got to say, hey judge, I have an injury. I'm harmed by the way that they're doing things. Judge, the law says you can't do this because, judge, if you ruin my favor, you will remedy my injury. And that's it. That's all you need to do to have a sufficient, what is called pleadings. It's just papers to the court that specify a harm, an injury, and how to do it. But what it does is really meant to slow down the market. By slowing down the market for those individuals who look like us in this room, what you do is, I mean, it's public information. Remind me what the rent roll here was. Was it 50 or 75 or?
45.
45, right? And that's on the low end, right? Like, and that's crazy, right? You're paying $45,000 a month for rent. So if now I force you into court and I get a judge to agree with one argument, then I get to hold you for, let's say, 4 or 5 months at $45,000. Then on top of that, I wait for a market to open up, and then I keep
the people that I promised jobs to that I already started paying them,
Right,
You know,
because you
man.
have real expenses.
Yeah, and then waiting for the next check. Do I tell them, nah, there's a lawsuit and I can't pay you your check on Friday? No, I have to pay it.
And then we also have to be mindful of who's running these agencies, right? It's not lost on me that the chair of the cannabis board is a black woman. It's not lost on me that the executive director of the Office of Cannabis Management is a black man. What do you do if you want to shut up those people? You file a lawsuit, guess what they can't do? They can't talk publicly about anything. So if I keep a lawsuit coming, I slow down those who you're trying to help, and at the same time, I pacify or really silence those in power to speak out about what's actually happening. And they'll tell you it's just part of our deal, right? I saw something on LinkedIn yesterday where someone was complaining because you can't outright buy somebody's license in New York. The audacity. To Cassandra's point, you're complaining like, oh, this is horrible, you can't even buy a license outright. Like, that's what you're complaining about? So because you can't buy a license outright, you want to slow down my market, close down my market. And when I say my market, I'm really talking about our market, right? Because we all benefit from the legalization of the plant. And what you have is, you just have a lot of frivolous lawsuits that even if they don't make sense, slow everything down because you at least have leadership who can't talk about it, right? Like they can't say, hey, you know, New York is headed on $1 billion this year at cannabis thing because there's a cannabis lawsuit going on, right? They can't say like, we have 476 licenses of justice involved individuals. California as a state barely has 500 legal dispensaries. They've been operational for 2 decades. We're already here. They can't say California has over, you know, maybe 700 illicit shops, so more than the legal shops there, to give a comparative because there's a lawsuit going on. So these lawsuits are pacifying individuals who have the data and have the attention of people, but because there's a lawsuit, they're unable to talk about what's going on.
I appreciate that. You know, they also can't say that New York has the most black dispensaries in the country, but, and you can clap, you're supposed to clap for that.
Most black women dispensaries.
And most black women dispensaries also. Okay, so I wanna talk about CARD, because I know that's what they wanted me to talk about here, and then we'll get to my questions. We understand what CARD was intended to do. We understand right now that CARD has pushed out a lot of different lawsuits, which has slowed down the process. Costa, you got a CARD license, yes?
Yes.
Can you tell us what is working with it and what's not working?
So like Jorge was saying, when there's money involved, there's a lot of corporate greed. And when corporate greed and these white people are not getting paid, you know, big bucks, that's the honest truth. And we slow down their market, we're burning their pockets because they're not getting in the market right away. They're gonna get greedy and sue, and slow down the market. And so that's the biggest thing that happened in the whole CARD episodic in the last 2 years. Just like people are pouting, oh, that's not fair, that's not fair. You guys get to skip the line. Yeah, damn right, we got reparations.
You were the first, you were the front of the line
Yeah,
of getting right with them.
like y'all say y'all been in the game, we've been before the game, you know, like before y'all started playing this legal game, we were in the other game, you know, and it's just been where money's involved, greed is involved, corporate's involved, enviness is involved, and it's just sad because cannabis was intended to like just, I mean, every time I smoke with my people around here who's sitting in this room, like we're having a good time, you know, we're not fighting nobody. This whole thing about like, hey, people are gonna get rowdy when they smoke and all this stuff, that's not true. That's when they go take a shot of tequila on the bar. You know what I mean? All we wanna do is have a good time and chill out and have a good, you know, energy around us. But that was the intention, and it's just been a whirlwind because it's been 2 years, I believe, since CARD started being mentioned. around there, I think it was March of 2022. And when they wrote that, you had to have the conviction, you had to have the net profitable business for at least 2 years. And I was reading this and I was like, this is written for me, but I didn't believe it, you know, and then I started doing more research and going to every panel, and it's been a process. It was not like, hey, I met the qualifications, I submit an application, I'm gonna get a license right away. I mean, 903 licenses, applications went in, and originally it was only gonna be, I think, 150, then they bumped it to 300, then they bumped it to 4 and change. And there was more supposed to be coming out, but people got stuck in lawsuits as well. But it's, you know, long story short, it's been fucking crazy. I think I saw Chris Alexander come in the room. No, but I commend Chris, because, yo, that man's been through a lot through this whole process, and people don't understand. He helped with pushing the whole process through, and people just give him so much backlash. It's crazy.
So one thing that we didn't talk about, that people who want to sue the card program don't talk about, their card application was $2,000. The priority application, how much do you think a priority retail adult use application costs? $500. $500. So the people who paid less money to apply and be part of the system are complaining. But they didn't complain that cost paid $2,000 to apply. They aren't complaining about the over 900 people that applied and paid $2,000, but they're complaining. What are they really complaining about? Right? You have to ask yourself this. Like, what are they complaining about? You paid $500, maybe you paid $1,000.
But
These people paid more than double. But medical, who cares about medical? They get medical insurance, right? We're talking about people, right? Which is a whole nother topic. But the hard part, I think, about card and just people in general who have a license is that this is a business, right? So a business comes with regulations within itself. So it's important to realize, well, how much are you making? What's profitable? What are you gonna really pay people? What does a payroll look like, right? Even if you're a small business owner, most small business owners aren't 8-figure small business owners. There's no reason for anyone with a cannabis license not to be an 8-figure business owner at the smallest level. So when you're talking about 10+ millions of dollars, that's why these people are filing the lawsuits. They see nobody else consumes more cannabis than New York State. They see that a small store could make 10M. So guess what? I could put $800,000 into litigation, right? When we talk about the car litigation, do you know who the lead attorney was for that? That brought the case. Anyone heard of a gentleman named Hunter Biden? It was Chris Clark, Hunter Biden's attorney. Do you really think disabled veterans can afford the same attorney as a sitting president's son? No way. I'm gonna call BS. Right? So those are the challenges that are happening. They want in because they see, hey, that small store is worth no less than $10 million. If I could get in and I spend $1 million litigating and I just get the chance of getting a license, I'm more than 10 times my profit. Sorry.
No, I appreciate this. I wanna make sure I hit these questions because I'm a little bit scared of Leticia and Melvin. One of the things that we talked about here, and you both mentioned it, is like with the card license, with the lawsuits, it slowed a lot of things down. And one of the things that we consistently hear about is the illicit shops. People that are just opening shops all over the place. We don't know what they're selling or where they're getting the stuff from and the implications of it. And it's actually really increased the pressure in the public, right? People are like, man, this thing is not working anymore. We just gotta give it to these other people. And the people that are complaining about card are like, let us get in there, we'll fix it. And then they're saying like, we gotta arrest everybody in these illicit shops because they're breaking the law that you guys created, da 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 da. So here, Cos, it must be a weird place for you to be in, right? With having a regulated shop, the illicit shops, right?
Now, that shop open like, and that's the steam pipe, so don't worry about the smoke, we're switching that, don't worry. It's gonna safe. But that flame zone spot, like two weeks after we opened, after us opening 2 weeks later, they opened. And that's not real legacy. You know what I mean? That was not what the law was intended to support individuals like those people. Those are opportunists. They don't even know what they're selling. You go in there, you tell them, yo, you got weed? We got Zaza. This is Zaza, this is Zaza, you want this Zaza? This is Zaza. And you'll be like, all right, I'll take a Zaza, you know? But they don't even know what they're selling because they're getting a lot of stuff, expired product from the back end of cultivators in Cali, Wash, whatever. They're bringing it over here and they spraying it with sprayed terps just to have the funk there, you know? And so it's just crazy, and I feel like I'm a certified snitch now. Like no, it's serious. Like, cause I still live by it. Like, I don't want to tell on nobody, and people be like, yo, why are you over there telling? I'm like, I'm not telling you got a weed leaf on your store. You told on yourself. You know.
Me on one too.
Yeah. Like this shit is flashing. You know, and NYPD is sitting in front of you. But I'm like, you just told on yourself.
Jorge and Eli, I want to bring you into this because the illicit shops are big. They're a big conversation piece, and I think one of the things that has been really humbling as a legalizer, a regulator, well, a legalizer, I'm not a regulator, is that we spent 20 years saying that cops should not be involved with cannabis, right? We say, don't arrest people for cannabis, this is not a law enforcement issue, blah, 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 blah. We work really hard, we pass a law. And we want everyone to follow the law, which is really naive because people don't be following laws, right? And then we're like, okay, everybody, follow this law. And then there are still people that don't follow the law, right? Even the law that you think you made for them, right? And I think it's really important, this point that you made, Cos, is like, these people that have the money to open up all this real estate in New York State are not the people that were criminalized. These are people that just had money, who are like, oh, cool, it looks good, so let me just move in here and do it. I walk into the stores all the time, and I'm like, you weren't at a rally? I've never seen your name in a docket because I've seen all the names in New York. Like, you just got here, right? And you're benefiting from, and the thing that actually makes me really upset about it is that one of the things that actually held up legalization for multiple years was because we said the tax revenues from cannabis were supposed to be reinvested in the communities that were policed. And the illicit shops make it very difficult to do that.
And the math, I'm just gonna stop you right there because I got 80 shops around me with no licenses.
That's right.
I would say probably 95% of them are not from here, and maybe one store may be a real legacy player. Like, I would support that individual and go to the shop. But most of them are just taking advantage of the opportunity. But most of these stores just have one person working in that store. I have 38 employees between two, but 25 people working downstairs. And I'm not making crazy money downstairs like that. But across the street, I seen their books. They make $1 million a month. They see 300 people a day. The one over there, they see 300 people a day, and they show me their books, so they're like, yo, we want to invest in you, and I'm like, nah, I'm not breaking the law, because I don't need to do it. I don't need to fuck with you. You know, I'm gonna figure this thing out no matter what. But it's just to give you and everybody here lives in the city, so you already know how many smoke shops are here.
Yeah.
You know, and there's people that used to kick me out of their bodegas that are now selling weed in the bodegas.
So Jorge, how do we navigate this, right? Because it actually is legal to a limit, because it's like we've made it legal, now people are breaking the rules that we created. What do we do?
Yeah, I think it's also, I see it like in conjunction with the lawsuits. It's like another kind of nefarious way to get around it and to change the market. So, and as Kaz says, it's not the people that were intended to benefit that are opening up these shops. I also, aside from the missing tax revenue, it's really disheartening, like on a personal level, for people that have card licenses and are trying to figure out, and many are in this room that I know are trying to figure out how to open their own shops, checking every box, you know, going through every regulation, every single, you can't put certain things on your window, right? And then to see these other shops just open it up, like on a psychological level, it also messes with people. It's like, why am I doing this? Why am I trying to take the invitation from the government to do this the right way? You know, I've been fucked over by the government already for so many years, and they don't seem to care. But there is a way to regulate these without criminalizing them. I mean, you know, if a liquor store opened up on the block, you know, they'd shut it down immediately. The sheriff would be in there, they don't have a license. The landlord, they'd go after the landlord, they close it down. Now, it's not, so it's like not that simple, and I know the budget, I think, the budget at the state level is about to close, and I think it's gonna give a little bit more leeway, but you can do this in a way that goes after landlords and goes after civil penalties, if you have the want for it and the resources behind it. But I think there's also a whole political background to all this, which we didn't talk about that much, but I think people should remember this, the MRTA passed in 2021, as Governor Cuomo was like getting pushed out of office. Like, remember that time? He like, this was his last ditch, like, I'm gonna pass something, and that's really the reason why the bill that we got was so robust.
Press day.
Yes, it was, but then, you know, a new governor came on, and it took a long time to get this started. And this wasn't a governor that had a lot of experience with, you know, this area or investment in it or felt personally accountable to it. And I think we should always be thinking about that political background and what support there is for closing down shops, what support there is for, you know, the agencies that are doing this work and trying to do it the right way. You need to have political power behind it, because there is certainly a way that you could deal with this without criminalizing.
I personally believe, real quick, real answer, I think how we solve this is there's real cannabis board people, and they really get to choose who's real legacy or not, you know, and that's, you know, who could continue surviving or not. And that's, we know who the real players are.
So the one thing we haven't talked about is every legal shop has to sign a labor peace agreement between a bona fide union, which means that they open themselves up to negotiations and a contract with the union. So in other words, that shop across the street is union busting. They're taking away union jobs. We need to talk to the unions and say, why are you not outside? I see if there's construction, I see an inflatable rat somewhere, right? You've driven by the city, you walk by something, there's an inflatable rat. You've seen a protest, a union protest where there's 5 people. You're telling me there's 600 plus licensees, and each store is worth 10 million, or now, I'm not Rayman, but 10 million times even just 476. Cost is telling you 20 employees. 20 employees times 476 on the low end at living wages, at union jobs, at W-2 employment means these are people who are, maybe they can't afford rent, but now they would if they had these legal jobs. People who cannot afford a house, maybe home ownership, but now, you know, some of these dispensaries are paying significant, right? Like 50 grand a year to be a bud tender at some places, plus tips. That means you qualify for a $200,000 home somewhere, right? Like that instantly changes you. So to Cassandra's point, and to the point of this panel, law to the limit, we need an organizing component. And that's not gonna be left to me. I'm not an organizer. I understand that I need to have organizers on my side, but it's gonna be organizers that say, union, we need you to protest out there. You guys are all celebrating MLK Day like MLK didn't get shot down for going and protesting at not the largest rally in the world. So you're quick to remind us who MLK is. You're quick to remind us about the labor movement. Well, why do we have illicit shops when the labor movement is forcing everybody else who's legal to be part of it, but not preventing those who are not legal from taking union jobs?
Now that's a strategy. I did go to the union school at Cornell University, so I really do appreciate that point. Sam, I'm gonna bring you in here because I think we've talked about card We've talked about the strategy that people who are not from New York, people that have not been criminalized, are pushing to slow down the market. We've talked about the real implications of these illicit shops. Eli has said, like, you don't have to criminalize people. We don't have to go back to criminalization to actually deal with stuff when we regulated stuff. Jorge's talking about, like, there's additional stuff that we put in the MRTA to make regulation, and there are other people that should be protecting the integrity of the program, and why are they not protecting it, right? Sam, I wanna hear from you, what are still the unmet needs of people in this regulated moment? You know, you work at Fortune Society, what are the things that you're still seeing around cannabis that show the limits of the law?
Hello?
Yes.
Access to education and resources. You know, that's the main thing. If people are not educated, at least, you know, the right way by people who are living through the experience and going through these processes, it makes it very hard to really, you know, connect with people. People won't understand what they need to do. They won't understand, like, these illicit shops that are popping up, kids can walk in there and they'll sell to a child. I've seen it, to a child. You can tell that this person is like 12 years old, right? Now, regardless of what they do outside of that space, you're creating a problem, right? Because now that causes confusion, because it's like the same thing that you said. It's legal, you're underage, and you're buying from an illegal shop. Like, there's no education, there's no regulation around that. So education about, like, for me and myself, I'm still learning about all of these things and trying to educate myself so that when I'm coming into contact with other people around this topic, I can come from an informed space. I think a lot of people just talk from reading Instagram posts and reading, just swiping through. You read it, you might watch a reel, you might do that, but that's where the education stops. They're not coming to events like this, and things like this are not really being, well, they're being more promoted now, but I think they need to be promoted at a higher level. At places like, you know, organizations like Fortune and other places where we work purposely to serve those underserved people, and educating them and letting them see that these opportunities are there. That, you know, yeah, we're here to help you find housing, we're here to help you find a job, but let's educate you about these other industries that are opening up here. A lot of our clients that come through our Fortune smoke marijuana. They come in there smelling like a loud pack.
I'm a graduate from Fortune.
So I'm like, they're coming through the space, and it's like, so why not take those same people that are coming through, and instead of trying to force them to put on a tie, teach them about owning a business. What is the process to own a legal business? What is the process to just even get your foot in the door to be able to have a space like this, instead of just wanting to run and open up a place like what we see across the street? Right? So if there's no education and there's no access to the education and finding those people to provide that education, I think we're gonna continue to have a lot of the same issues.
I'm gonna ask you another question, and then I'll get to you, Eli, because I wanna make sure you keep talking. What do your clients need from lawyers right now?
Access.
Access to what?
The lawyer. Like, public defenders, their caseloads are ridiculous. We have clients that come through, I've never met my attorney, I don't know who that is. I've spoken to attorneys and been like, hey, your client's got a warrant. I don't know who that is, I've never met that person. There was another person sitting in on the record when our client got placed into your program. I never met them. How do you combat that? Like, there's only so much I can do. I can try reaching out to the different offices and trying to find, like, the supervisor and being like, hey, I have this client, can you tell me who, like, their attorney is? But how long does that take? Now I have to wait for a response. And now I have a client that's sitting directly in front of me that is like, they don't have space to wait. They don't have time to wait. They want things to happen right now. They want to speak to somebody now because they have an open case, and they're scared. They're like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do these things. And they can't even think about trying to go get resources or trying to go sit in a group or sit in a counseling session because they haven't spoken to their attorney. So if they don't have access, so there's even that, like, actually having access to the people that are supposed to help you.
So, okay, for the lawyers, the aspiring lawyers, one, we need more public defenders. Eli?
Yeah, no, I think there's two things I was gonna say that when we talk about legal to a limit, what do we need to actually realize the goal of social equity? But one, it goes a lot to what Sam was saying. Like the project that we created, the Bronx Cannabis Hub, we created to provide people with lawyers, like a public defender for lawyers for weed to get your license, basically, which is not something that's promised by the state or the Constitution. So it's something we had to raise money for. We ended up screening 600 people for a card license, and we could only help 30 people. And still, now we're just helping like 20 people still through this process. And look around at how many people need lawyers and need help navigating this, right? And it's not something that's funded right now, and so people are going to get taken advantage of. I mean, there's some good lawyers who are trustworthy, and there's some people that will take advantage, try to take a piece of somebody's license, things like that. So, but even more directly, what's necessary is funding for licensees. Like New York promised a social equity model, but where are people going to get the money to open up their shops if there's not a real source of funding from the state? And I think it's on the state to actually invest in that. And that means social equity funds with social equity terms. That means low interest loans. That means grants, because there's so many people, and again, sitting in this room right now with a card license, could open a shop, but they don't have the money to get the lease to open it up. So if we actually care about that, we need to put our money where our mouth is. And this can be a revolving fund. If a loan is successfully opening a business, that money comes back into the fund. It can be used for somebody else. So we need to talk about that. I mean, we need to invest in that for there to be a real opportunity for success. Because you might have the best lawyer, but if you don't have money, how are you going to pay for the lease?
What are the other unmet needs that are necessary for us to actually make regulation and legalization real? Not just for businesses, but for our community members to be legal.
We need to acknowledge past harms, and we need to acknowledge that while we sealed records, right, because everybody understands cannabis arrests generally have been sealed. Sealing a record doesn't help someone who's trying to be a citizen and now has no access to that arrest, and now is getting deported, even though they may have not gotten deported if they had the actual paperwork. So there are real things that we need to wrap our minds around and work together in community. It took a village to get here, and it's going to take a village to keep us here, and it's going to take a larger village to push us forward. So as we think about this market and what legalization is and what limits are, we need to be able to think creatively, look back at history, and just ask people, what do you need? Not say, oh, I live here, I know the needs of the community. You don't. There's 19 million people that live in this state. There's no way. If we're looking at a mile radius, there's probably at least 200,000 people that live in a mile radius from here, right? So we definitely don't know the needs of everyone in this community, but the way we move forward is by providing an opportunity for people to be heard, to recognize that because cannabis isn't federally regulated, that means that language access in a state where maybe 20% of individuals are limited English proficient, meaning English isn't their dominant language, they're not gonna have the information they need. So it's great that the state is putting money forward for ads to educate individuals, but it'll be wonderful. We're in a community where half of them are speaking an Asian dialect, the other half are speaking a Spanish dialect, and there's no advertisement in neither language. So all they see is neon lights and a plant. Some may say I'm for it, others may say I'm not for this. But if you were able to say union jobs, 3% goes to the community, your schools get to stay open, can you tell me about what programs are happening here? Because the programs that happened last year shouldn't be the same programs that happened after this year, because there's 3% tax revenue on businesses that are grossing 10 million plus a year that should be going to that community. So if for every $1 million, there's 30 grand that's going to the community, and these illicit shops, as Koss pointed out, are making $1 million a month, then renters do. Y'all owe the neighborhood 30 grand a month.
I wasn't being recorded, I would say what we should do. What do you need? What is the unmet need? What can lawyers do for you?
First, yeah, I could go downstairs and buy something. Second, yeah, information. I think information and education is like gonna be key. One prime example, like Brian's in the back. Brian, raise your hand. Right here. He has a car license. Originally, so my whole story is I came home from prison. I joined Fortune. Fortune helped me get an internship. I was hustling and doing a whole bunch of stuff. Long story short, I joined this program called the 5 Ventures. The 5 Ventures believes that illegal entrepreneurs can become legal entrepreneurs. I sit on the national board. But throughout that program, it was 10 years ago, I met incredible entrepreneurs, like real street hustlers that really converted to becoming entrepreneurs. In that program, 23 of us graduated. When this happened and it got legalized, the only people that I knew that could really qualify, you had a previous business that had 2 years in net profit and had the conviction. I was like, yo, I'm gonna hit up every homie I got from the 5 Ventures, like, yo, take advantage of this, take advantage of this. I went back to the corner where people are hustling and be like, yo, you might be able to qualify. I see you doing like Uber Eats, you know, where you're 1099, you know, you showing a profit and you have the conviction. Like, this is education that I'm giving to you. I'm gonna like airdrop the PDF of the whole regulation, because I've read every single word in that regs and law and everything. And I was like, all you gotta do is just keep reading and reading and reading. That's just me, you know, and I helped about 7 people get a car license, just from my small network. But another thing is like, Brian can't even get his store open because he's still searching for funding. You know, he doesn't have a couple $100,000 to put on a thing like that. The landlord here charged us 10 months just for deposit. You know, over $400,000 just to put our name on the line, to put our business in the line. And when this whole lawsuit shit and I called or happened, I was like, yo, can you hook it up? You know, there's a little delay, but no, I want first of the month, next week, pay me. And he owns the smoke shop next to McDonald's right there, you know, which is great. The smoke shop next to McDonald's right there. They closed down, but he had no idea that they were selling. He was like, supposedly he had no idea. And I was like, yo, I'm gonna go get a bag. He was like, no, Muhammad doesn't sell that shit. And I'm like, come with me. Muhammad, what you got? Zaza. Here you go, you know? And now, I don't know, the city really shut them down. But they have a sign over it saying, closed for renovation, over the sign that the city put. So you can't make this shit up.
So what I'm hearing from y'all is we need lawyers to do some policy translation for people, and I think you talked about this on our prep call, like getting lawyers to actually play a translator role from like what the law is going out into communities, which really goes to what Jorge was talking about with organizing. Like, how are you using your credentials as a lawyer to translate, not to be over community, but to be in community with community, right? How are you using your skills for community members to leverage your skills and resources to get their due, right? Then there's the conversation about what is the additional stuff that you can do to actually make our community legal, right? So what is the work that you can be doing in family policing, right? To make sure that parents who are wrongfully being engaged in our hospitals and in the child welfare system, that are being caught up around cannabis, how are you providing support in family defense, right? And I know Bronx Defenders has an amazing family defense unit, and really making sure that we can keep our families together, because despite the fact that there are white parents on the cover of GQ or the Today Show talking about how cannabis and psychedelics helps their parenting, if you go to the Family Defense Court, you will see nothing but Black and Latino moms who are getting their kids taken away. right? And so like, what is the support that we can get from legal students to really push, or lawyers to like push and create protections for our families? How are we also talking about the stuff that Kaz was talking about, which is like, where are the lawyers in fighting the predatory landlords? What's the zoning shit that's happening in the community boards? Who actually understands the real estate laws and the property laws, and really standing in between these predatory people and our future business owners? People don't have access to lawyers, right? And so here, you know, I'm really proud that DPA was able to provide seed funding for the Bronx Cannabis Hub to really recognize that lawyers have a role in translating, but also protecting and pushing, right? The thing that we need lawyers to do is not just uphold the law, but to be creative with the law, right? CARD is an expression of creativity. It's innovation. So stop looking for what the law says right now. This room, most of you would not be legal 50 years ago. Okay? So why are we looking for the master's tools to create the new world that we want? So what is the innovation that our legal minds can actually push forward, right? Not just in the criminal legal system, but in the ways that you support entrepreneurs, right? What does it look like for us to figure out what are new bodies of law or analysis that we can be pushing forward? So stop looking for the job that exists, and what are the jobs you can create? Because cannabis has always been about resistance and creating a way out of no way. There's no way that New York can be the biggest underground market if everyone followed the rules. And we are having a hell of a hard time bringing that underground market into the light. And not all of it will come to the light. I can buy Chanel on 5th Avenue and I can buy Chanel on 34th Street. You know what I'm saying? So let's not be ridiculous.
And the real people that are in the streets, they telling me like, yo, get them shut down. Like people that have been hustling for years, still hustling, they getting undercut in the market because they selling $60 ounces. You know what I mean? They selling $60 ounces in these streets, and like somebody that was selling $200 ounces can't make any money because they're like, nah, you know, I could go down the block and get it for 60. You know what I mean? So they're like, yo, we gotta get this whole thing. The black market needs to thrive. When
baby, I like black.
But the
opportunistic.
Yeah, no, that we
Yeah.
so I don't want to put color into this, but the name is like, you know, back in the day in the streets and who people still doing stuff underground is the so-called black market, and then we have the gray market that have the stores open and taking advantage of the MRTA, and then we have the legal market, which is, you know, what CARD is right now.
Yes, all of those things true. And I think part of the thing that we're trying to push for the folks in the room, and I think part of why Melvin and Leticia wanted to have this conversation, was just to emphasize to folks in the room that what we're doing doesn't have any rule book. We get to create the rules. So what are the things that you want to see that we can implement and organize around, build around, that actually center people like Kaz, like Jorge, like Sam, and accomplices like Eli, I'm gonna put you in there, to actually build the world that we want? What are the kinds of creative thoughts or the innovations that need to show up? Because the truth is that the people that don't want Kaz to win are being innovative in the way that they use the system currently. They coming up with random shit just to show up in court because they know the system will play to it. And we're trying to attest to that system that we know that's not built for us. To say like, oh no, don't do that. Tell them that they're dumb. They're not gonna do that. So what is it that we have to do to color outside the lines? CARD was coloring outside the lines. The MRTA was coloring outside the lines, right? So how do we keep that legal practice going, that organizing practice going, to actually say what we want as opposed to what they want to give us, right? Because they wanted for medical to go first, okay? What people don't know is that when medical passed in 2014, when they realized that adult use cannabis was gonna happen, they tried to change it so that medical licenses could expand. In 2018, so that when legalization happened, they could be sitting in wait. But what they didn't realize was that we had already been organizing, so we blocked that, right? They were trying to be creative. Now 2022, we passed CARD, right? CARD comes through, and now they're like, oh shit. Now we don't like it. Let's sow division. Let's sow dissent. Then you have capitalism capitalizes. Now you have illicit shops. We're trying to get this. We fought back on legalization so we could get tax revenue for our communities, and we can't get them because opportunists are flooding the market, which is making it impossible for cannabis justice to actually be invested back into our communities. So they're being creative. So what are the legal strategies and the innovations that legal students can do now to support organizers, policymakers, to think of creative ways to change industry? And also creative ways to heal our communities. No one thought that a legal decision for cannabis and drugs could actually get people to be repatriated back into the US. People are coming back. That's incredible. That is a legal strategy and innovation that IDP put together based on the work that we were doing on the MRTA. That is not based in the rules. That's based because people were creative. And so the thing about legal to a limit, and I'm gonna close out here, is what are the creative strategies that you can have in this room as legal students to come up with not what's gonna work within the system, but that's actually gonna work for our community. If we start with what would work for cause, that's gonna get us a lot further than what's gonna work for the governor. Does that make sense? Because that's actually the work. The work is actually making it easier for the hustlers on the street to be able to not change their whole lives, but just to be able to live their lives without being criminalized, stigmatized, and surveilled. That is the goal. The goal is not to get them to come in and be like Wall Street. It's to be like Delancey Street. Do you understand? That is the goal. And the idea that regulation has to make us force us to be into a larger system, a system that we have to cosplay into, is not the goal. And as lawyers, you have to figure out how we can make that happen. So I want to thank you all for coming tonight. These people are here for questions. Our CUNY law, it really means that you need to support the people. You got a support team. Chris Alexander is a graduate of CUNY law. Protect him, all right? Because he is being innovative and creative and pushing, and when we push, they push back. He's taking a lot of hits. And I think it's really important for our community to recognize it may not be perfect, but it is progress. And it's a lot better when we're in charge than when we're not. We get to make our own rules, we have to protect our own rules, and we have to roll up on people and be like, listen, baby, this actually doesn't work for me. Because that school over there got books that's 30 years old. And if you were actually a legal shop, you would pay for them to get updated books. Because that's what's supposed to happen. So remember that the law is limited, but we are not. Thank you and have a great night.